many years ago.
We were both involved in a show called Educating Archer.
No, never heard of it.
Yes, Peter Bruff and Archie Andrews and I used to and Ronnie used to write sketches for Beryl Reid, that's right. And then Eric Sykes, who'd been writing the show, went off to write his own show. And Ronnie and I said, well, let's come together and we'll go to the show for a bit. And then we suddenly realised that what really should be done was television. So we got together and during the war, Ronnie had been in a factory and he knew all about trade unions. And my father was in the silk business and the trade dress business. So putting all that together, we decided we went to see a factory where girls were making, sitting there with sewing machines and so on. And so we wrote a show called The Rag Trade, which was quite a big success, and so much so that the trade union asked the BBC to take the show off because it made fun of trade unions. Thank God the BBC told them to get lost. And that was, I think, how we got together, doesn't it, Ronnie? That's about it.
We had some awful notices when it started. Yes. And I think I sent Steve some copies of those. I think he put it on the website. You could read what was said about the show. But it took a little time. And I think when we changed the casting of Mum, that was a great boost to the second series of the show. And then it still hadn't actually grabbed a large audience. And then Cyril Bennett, the controller of London Weekend Television, had a whole, on a Sunday afternoon, he didn't know what to put on. He thought, shall I try this on the buses programme? It hasn't done so very well where we've had it in on a Friday night. So he put it on around tea time on a Sunday. And to his amazement, and I think a little bit to ours, but we were confident in it, but suddenly, I mean, we knew we had good shows, but we had enormous figures. People were tuning in, the advertisers were getting very excited, trying to book a slot, because obviously, if you're an advertiser, you want to pay for your advert in a time when a show is getting a maximum audience. Because, you know, that's what you get your money for. And our advertising department would say, great, we can now charge them more money. Because we can say for that money they're getting 50,000 people looking or 500,000 people looking. And then it went up to 2 or 3 million. I mean, this was fantastic. And that was the big boost for us, because then when we came with the third series in the autumn of that year, we became number one nationally. And the company never had a show that was number one. And in those days, you have to remember, there were very few channels, so not like today, you know. It's very difficult today for a broadcaster to get a very big audience, because you can watch, you've got a choice of 20, 30 different television channels, but there was only 4. Okay. So it made a big difference.
New uniforms was one of the funniest ones, the ones when measuring the sausage, because then they met some Swedish girls who thought in their new uniforms that they were, and she said, oh, are you a pilot? Do you fly your jumbo jet to New York? And Stan Butler, who was not very good with words, was about to say no, but Jack said, oh yes, we fly the jumbo jet. And so then they went out the girls, and we had some rather naughty gags, because the next morning, Stan Butler said, oh, I think I'll be all right with her tonight. And Jack, the conductor said, I was all right with her last night. And said, but then they came to work the next day, and the inspector said, we've decided to do away with these uniforms. Actually, no, so take these things off, don't put on the uniforms. So they did, and then the 2 Swedish girls arrived to take a bus, and they saw these 2 guys dressed up as bus drivers, bus conductors. And he said, you know the pilot who drives the jumbo jet? And of course the inspector fell about. He says, get on, fly off to the cemetery gates. I think one of the questions was that we wanted a girl called Olive. That sounded quite a funny name, and a character called Olive. I don't know, what was it? I don't know.
It was just a name.
Just a name, I don't think we thought.
But Olive sounded a funny name.
Yes.
But when I started the show, Reg Varney had had a heart attack, and he was very concerned about this and asked me if the rehearsals could be as short as possible so he could rest. And he didn't want to, overexert himself, because it's very frightening if you have a heart attack. And so I did my best to make things as easy for him as I could in the rehearsals. In fact, we never rehearsed in the afternoons. There were two reasons for that. One was so that Reg could go home and rest. Second reason was that some of the cast, I said they were all nice people, they did like a drink. I won't too loud. They did like a drink, and if they got into the bar, when they came back for the afternoon rehearsal, they were much more difficult to direct than they had been in the morning. And I thought, this is not working. So I decided I'd send them all home in the afternoon, and we still managed to get the show on. But they were all lovely people in their different ways, and they all liked to laugh together. In fact, they got so panicked that on several occasions when I was editing the programme, putting the pieces together, I had to cut out the wrong name, because instead of calling him Stan, he'd say Reg. I probably didn't notice it and get him to do it again in front of the audience. And I'd be editing the programme, and suddenly I'd find that they'd call each other their Christian names, not their character names, which was quite embarrassing. And in those days, editing anything was really rather difficult.
First of all, we were approached about writing a film. So if you remember, the last few episodes on the buses were written by other writers. And Reg Varney didn't like that, and he walked out of the show. He wouldn't do it anymore. So that was the end of the television series. It was interesting that because the television series was such a big success, somebody suggested to a man called Jimmy Carreras, who was the head of Hammer Films, who made nothing but mystery films, the Hammer horrors, they were called. Said, why don't you make a film based on that? He said, well, I wouldn't mind as long as somebody would put some money up. I'm not going to put the money up for it. And at that time, there was an impresario called Bernie Delfont. And Bernie Delfont's two children loved On the Buses series. They thought it was marvellous. So he came forward and said, I'll put a bit of money up. I'll put no more than £100,000. And we had to make the film for less than that. So we made the film for £99,000.
Yeah, but we made money out the film. They made money out the film.
Oh, eventually they kept phoning up. I remember Bernie Delfont phoning up all the cinemas in London, finding out, I can't believe it, this is taken this much.
He could not believe it.
No.
The film was done in about 6 weeks or something like that.
Yes.
It would.
And because
Hammer built in between two Hammer horrors.
Yes, that's right. But because Hammer had never done any comedy at all, just these horror films, so when he had the money, he said to us, well, I don't know, you better produce it. So we became the producers, would you believe, as well as the writers. And we did rather well after that. We got a percentage of the tape. When I tell you that the film you've just seen took more money in its first year than the James Bond film that was out that year. And so that the critics still didn't like it. Now, as in America, bottoms on seat, if the film takes money, it's a great film. In England, it's not artistic.
Well, it wasn't artistic.
No, and it's true, you'll find that that's why the British film industry is in the way it is.
Obviously, when they saw the success of the television shows, the producers of movies thought, let's get in on the act and commission you to write a movie, didn't they? That's how it happened.
Well, we did everything in the movie that we weren't allowed to do on TV.
Yes, well, I did. Yes, you did put some things in there that I had edited out as being not suitable for family entertainment. But you got away with it in the cinema. I won't tell you what they were. There's children present.